Hello everyone. My name is Muhammad Hamid and today I will explain you about what is an array in C++ and how we use arrays in C++ programming. Okay, so this is what we have to cover today. First of all, understand very simple definition what is an array. Array is a collection of elements. Okay, collection of elements. If we talk in terms of C++ in C++ programming, what is array? Array is a simple way to represent collection of variable. We all know what is variable, right? Okay, variable is a memory element to store one value. Okay, so if for example if we want to store a collection of data, okay, a bunch of data, okay, that we want to store in a variable, then we use array. Okay, array is the one that we use to store a collection of variables. Okay, and but those variable will be of the same type. Means for example I can store a data of 50 variables, but all of them must be of integer type in an array. Okay, so I can store in one array a data of 10 variables which are all of the float type. Okay, now when we need array, okay, when we need array, very simple, the array is required when we need to represent whole collection of data or whole bunch of data. Because it does not make sense that we create a bunch of variables. For example, I create integer a, integer b, integer c, okay, a bunch of variables. It doesn't make sense. Okay, and then we need to group together, and we do not sometimes we require to store data of 50 variables, and it does not make sense to create 50 variables. Okay, we cannot specify integer 1, integer 2, integer 3, and so on. Okay, so in that case what we do, we simply use arrays. Okay, otherwise it will become very terrible for us, it will be unfeasible, and it will be unmaintainable. Okay, we cannot maintain the data as well. Okay, and especially if we have a high number of data, if I have, let's say, 50 variables or 100 variables, okay, it doesn't make sense, okay, to define 100 variables or 50 variables in your program. So what we can do in that case, that we create an array to contain all those data elements. Okay, but those data elements should be of same data type, as I explained before. It should be integer or float, whatever we have. Okay, it makes our lives very easy. Okay, and it gives a full control to the C++ programming, and we give a programmer, and we will see how it gives us a control. So in short, what is an array in C++? In C++, an array is like having multiple variables. They are collected in one variable. Okay, so now let's take a look, okay, that how we define the array in C++. So how we define array in C++? Okay, this is the first thing I will explain. So defining an array in C++ is very simple. First of all, we define the type. Let's say I define a type of integer. Okay, and then I define the name. So for example, I give a name, example, and I define the size, for example, in the bracket. Okay, this is a bracket. Okay, and in this bracket I define the size. What is the size of that particular array? So for example, I write 5. It means this example array is an array which has 5 variables in one array variable. Okay, 5 total data size is 5. Okay, so you need to understand first this thing. Okay, how to define the array. Okay, now for example, to collect, what will happen now when we define like this array in the in C++? What it will do, it will allocate how many space in the memory? total 5 locations in the memory to store 5 different values. Okay, 5 different values. So now we need to access that particular array. So how can we access the array? It's very simple. Okay, elements in the array. I want to access the elements in the array. So for example, if I write example 0 equals to 2, so what will happen? That in that particular array, in the first location, okay, in the first, so for example, if I say what are the variable positions here, we have 5 variable position. We have position 0, then we have position 1, then we have position 2, then we have position 3, then we have position 4. Okay, so we have total 5 different positions in that particular array, which is example. Okay, so if I write example 0 to example, similarly I can write example 1, let's say I write it 100. Okay, so now in these, what will happen now on those particular locations, okay, these values will be stored. So this is the way we can individually store different values in that particular array. Okay, now what we call this, what we are writing here, 0 or 1, that is the specific location. We call them in terms of in C++, we call them index. What we call them? Indexing. Okay, indexing. So a particular indexing. So in our case, this indexing is from where to where? In this example, the index is from 0 to 4. Okay, here, because why? Because the size of the variable is what? We have variable size is the array size is 5. Okay, so therefore it has total 5 elements, and the index is from 0 to 4. So simply, what is index? Index refer the variables inside that array that we have. Okay, so on always index start from 0, and depending upon what is the size, so our size is 5, so it will end up at 4. Okay, it doesn't start 1, it will start from 0. Okay, this is the second thing that you need to understand. Similarly, I can also define our array like this. Very simple. I can write down integer example. Okay, and this one equals to I can write, sorry, I have to write the size, and then I can write, let's say I write 2, I write 100. Okay, and I write let's say 22, I write 31, I write 51. Okay, so this is the array that I defined. Assume this is my array. So what we have now, very simple. In if I see this one in this example, if I define this array, so in this example at index 0, okay, what is the value is index 0? It is 2. Okay, it is equals to 2. Similarly, at index let's say 1, what is the value? It is equals to 100. Similarly, at index 22, it is equals to what? Index 2, it is equals to 22. Okay, so very simple. We can see at a particular index what is the value stored. Okay, and in our case, for example, if you would like to print those the elements in this array, it is very simple. What I can write, I can use the for loop. Okay, in our case, okay, we all know for loop, right? So I can simply write down like this, that for I can define one variable I for the index integer I equals to 0. Okay, I less than equal to 4, and I plus plus. Okay, and then if I write C out example, and I will write here I. Now please focus on this code. So what will happen? You can understand, right? Okay, what will happen now? This loop will go from 0 to 4, okay, 0 1 2 3 4, and every time it will print the values which are in there. So what will be the output? Output will be very simple. The output will be, it will print 2, then 100, then 22, then 31, then 51. Okay, so this is the way that we can print the value of an array at different indexes. We can print it in C++ programming. Similarly, for example, I would like to define an array, okay, and I would like to take the input in the array. So how can we take it? Okay, how can we define in C++? Okay, so for example, I define an array, the same. I define this array, okay, and I will define a for loop. Okay, so I equals to 0, I less than equals to 4, I plus plus. Okay, so then I can simply write down cin example I. Okay, what will happen now? This loop will go from 0 to 4, which are the indexes. Okay, the first one, it will come example 0. So whatever the value I will store, I can store at different location. Okay, different location, I can simply store the value. Okay, so very simple. Okay, so it will take the whatever the inputs I will provide, it will be stored at that particular location. Every time I can give the input, and that input will go to that particular location in the array. So for example, when the I equals to 0, so example 0, I can enter any value that will go to the first location. Okay, then we have 1 2 3 4. Okay, so total 5 location I defined in the example array. So it will go from 0 to 4, and whatever the input I will provide, that will be stored in that particular array. Okay, so this is one example that we have, that how can we take the input. So I just describe you both that how can you print and how you define the array. We have seen already. We have seen that how can we individually put the values. Okay, then we see that how can we print the values in the array, and then we have also seen that how can we take the input, okay, in a particular array that we have defined. Now let's see one example, detailed example. What is in this example we have? Please look here, that we have a variable define, array variable which is defined, which is the variable name is numbers. The type of the array variable is integer, and it has 5 elements. It means numbers is an array which will have total 5 variables inside that particular array. Okay, and then we have one more variable sum which has 0. Okay, then we got a message, enter 5 numbers. Okay, and then we have a loop. Okay, as I defined that we can use for loop, very simple, to include the array. Okay, so then we have this array will go from I equals to 0 to less than 5, means from 0 to 4. Okay, and it is taking the input cin number I, as I said that indexing. So number 0, the first value will go, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Okay, and at the end we are writing what? Sum plus equals to number I. Okay, and the second statement inside the loop. And what does it mean? Okay, we know what does it mean. It means that sum equals to sum plus number I, right? Okay, so every time the value of sum will be updated. Okay, so for example, I enter the 5 numbers. Okay, 3, and then 3 4 5 3 4 5 4 2. Okay, so every time now it will be adding the value also in the sum. So first one, for example 3, the initial value of the sum is 0, right? So 0 plus 3 will be 3. The next time when I will become 1, the next value what I put? 4, right? So 3 plus 4 will be 7. Okay, so this will give you 7. Then it will give you 12. Then 16. 16 plus 2, the finally will be 18. Okay, this statement. Okay, it will be like this. And when it will come out of the loop, now here we are not printing anything, right? In the loop, we are just simply summing. Okay, every input we are taking the input and we are summing. So when the loop will finish, okay, the loop will finish from 0 to 4. Okay, then at the end it will print the value of sum. So sum equals 2, and we print the sum. So it is what is the sum? Sum is 8. So this is a simple example that how can we take the input in the array, okay, how we define the array, how we print the values of the array, and how can we utilize it in our programs. Okay, now you can just look different examples. You can find a lot of examples on the internet for the arrays, and you can just go through those examples and you can understand well. Okay.